Before we begin, understand this. What you are about to hear is a work of fiction, a narrative woven from the slivers of imagination. Yet it is built upon the stone-cold foundation of history. The techniques, the pigments, and the mastery of Johannes Vermeer are real, but the hearts we give them are ours. Tonight, we step into the year 1657. We search for the secrets hidden beneath the paint, guided by the alchemy of silence. Watch closely, for the light has been waiting for you. Delft, 1657. The morning air in the studio is cool, thick with the scent of linseed oil and the mineral tang of ground earth. Here, in this single room, the world is held still. Outside, the city of Delft breathes, the clatter of wooden shoes on cobblestone, the distant chime of the Nieuwe Kerk, but inside these walls time does not move, it waits. Johannes stands behind the dark box of the camera obscura. He is a man who trusts the lens more than his own eye. For him, the world is not made of objects, but of light hitting surfaces. He looks into the box. On the back wall, the image of the room is inverted, a dream of golden shadow turned upside down. In this reversal, the truth reveals itself. He sees the way the dust motes dance in the cool northern light, suspended like miniature diamonds in the air. Well, it is not just wool and dye. It is a landscape of texture. See the circles of confusion, those tiny shivering orbs of white light that Vermeer calls pointillés. They are not mistakes. They are the stars of the domestic world, captured by a lens that refuses to lie. The weave of the fabric, the richness of the red and gold. Everything is secondary to the way the light finds its anchor in the threads. This is the grammar of the eye, a silent dialogue between the seen and the unseen. In the shadows, he grinds the lapis lazuli, a blue more precious than gold, brought from the distant mountains of Afghanistan to this small room in Delft. It is a heavy mineral blue, not just a color, but the weight of the sky itself, waiting to be fixed onto the canvas. He mixes it with linseed oil, slowly, until the pigment disappears into a liquid velvet. This is the Saimai, the transformation of earth into light. In the shadows, he grinds the lapis lazuli, a blue more precious than gold, brought from the distant mountains of Afghanistan to this small room in Delft. It is a heavy mineral blue, not just a color, but the weight of the sky itself, waiting to be fixed onto the canvas. He mixes it with linseed oil, slowly, until the pigment disappears into a liquid velvet. This is the Simmi, the transformation of earth into light. He applies the lead tin yellow, not as a representation of light, but as light itself. See the impasto, the thick, buttery texture of the paint on the shoulder. He is not painting a girl. He is painting the way the sun chooses to touch her. The brush strokes are deliberate, built up in layers until the paint itself catches the side lighting. He is not a painter of faces. He is a keeper of the glow. And here, on this shoulder, the morning begins. But the window is still waiting for the one who will stand before it. She does not knock. There is no need. The arrangement between them is older than words, older than the particular morning, older perhaps than either of them could trace to its origin. She simply appears the way light appears, without announcement, without apology, in the doorway that opens from the stairwell into the studio's north-facing quiet. For a moment she stands there, not quite in the room and not quite out of it, occupying that particular human interval between arrival and presence, that fraction of a second in which a person has not yet decided entirely to be somewhere. Vermeer does not look up. He is at the table, adjusting the position of the letter, a single folded sheet of parchment, sealed and then broken open, its paper the color of old cream, its edges softened by handling. He places it in her hand before she has fully crossed the threshold. She takes it without looking at it. She already knows what it contains. Or perhaps she does not, and the not knowing is precisely the condition the painting requires. The green curtain hangs in the foreground. It is the first thing, before the girl, before the window, before the light itself. There is the curtain, heavy silk taffeta, dyed in a green so saturated it reads almost as a physical weight rather than a color. It falls from a rod above the picture plane and pools slightly at the bottom, its hem touching the tiled floor with the unconscious luxury of something that has never been asked to be useful. In the real room, if you are standing where the canvas will eventually hang, the curtain would be close enough to touch, close enough that your eye would refuse to focus on it entirely. Its edges, where the silk catches or releases the morning light, would blur into a softness that is not quite accident and not quite intention, a shallowness of vision that the camera obscura knows very well, that the human eye produces without effort when it is looking past a thing toward another thing further away. This is precisely what Vermeer wants. He wants the curtain to make you feel that you should not be here, that you have pushed aside something that was hanging for a reason, to preserve the privacy of what lies beyond it. The curtain is not decorative. It is ethical. It stands between the viewer and the girl, the way a half-closed door stands between a hallway and a grief. Technically passable, morally complicated. To look past it is to intrude, and yet you cannot stop yourself from looking, because what lies beyond it, the column of northern light, the girl's profile, the letter trembling very slightly in her hands, is unbearably, quietly beautiful. She is standing at the window now. She has taken her position with the naturalness of someone who has stood in this position before, on other mornings, for other paintings or for no painting at all, simply because this is where she comes when she wants to read something she is not sure she is ready to understand. The window is open at the lower pane. Cool air from the canal moves through the gap and lifts, almost imperceptibly, one corner of the tablecloth. The rug's gold threads catch the light and release those small circles of luminosity that Vermeer spent the earlier morning memorizing. She does not notice any of it. She's reading the letter, or she's not reading it. Her head is tilted at an angle that could mean either. Look at the window glass, not through it, at it. At the surface of the opened upper pane, which has swung inward at an angle that allows it to catch in reflection the face that her profile refuses to give you. In the reflected glass, her expression is visible in a way it is not in her actual turned face, and what the glass shows, fragmented, doubled, slightly smeared by the imperfections of 17th century manufacture, is something that her posture does not confirm and does not deny. A quality of inwardness, the particular stillness of a face that is processing something it has not yet decided how to feel about. The glass gives you her sorrow, if it is sorrow, her longing, if that is the right word, her resignation, or her relief, or her love. The glass offers all of these simultaneously, without committing to any. The way water reflects a sky that is simultaneously gray and gold and neither. The profile itself tells you nothing. This is intentional. Vermeer understood, with the certainty of a painter who has spent years studying the precise relationship between a face and its legibility, that the most affecting expression is the one withheld. The face turned away is more present than the face turned toward you, because the face turned away allows you to complete it with whatever you yourself are carrying that morning. She becomes, in her reticence, everyone who has ever stood at a window with a letter. The light inside the room is doing something extraordinary. It always is. In this studio, on mornings such as this one. But today, with the girl in position, with the curtain's green mass anchoring the foreground shadow, with the window pouring its cool column across her shoulder and her hands in the paper she holds, the chiaroscuro has achieved the particular pitch that Vermeer spends entire weeks attempting to find and hold. The dark interior of the room, its back wall in deep umber shadow, its corners lost entirely to blackness, throws the illuminated zone around the window into a relief so sharp that it seems almost to vibrate. The girl exists in a pocket of brightness that the surrounding darkness is actively pressing against. The parchment of the letter glows. It does not merely reflect the light, it appears to generate it, as if the words written on it are themselves a source of luminosity, as if meaning, when compressed into ink on paper and held in a human hand, becomes briefly physically radiant. Her shoulder catches the lead tin yellow he laid in this morning. The impasto ridge holds its light exactly as he intended, a warmth that the surrounding cool greens and blues of the room cannot extinguish. On the back wall, behind her and above, a painting watches. It is large, larger than you might expect in a room of this scale, and it depicts Cupid, not the soft, dimpled infant of later centuries, but a more purposeful figure, a young man-child standing with one foot upon a mask, his arm raised, his expression carrying the particular blankness of an allegorical subject that knows it is being observed. The mask beneath his foot is the mask of false love, of performance, of sentiment that wears another face in public than it wears alone. Cupid stands upon it. Cupid has conquered it. What the painting declares, to anyone literate in the symbolic vocabulary of the Dutch Golden Age, is that what is contained in the letter is true, that the love it speaks of, whatever its content, whatever its complications, is not performed, is not worn like a mask over some other colder feeling. This is 1657. The Cupid is fully visible. Layers of later paint, applied by some later hand, for reasons that art historians will spend centuries attempting to reconstruct, have not yet covered him. He stands on his mask in plain sight. He is a witness. He is, in the compositional logic of this painting, the only figure in the room who knows with certainty what the letter says. Vermeer steps back from the camera obscura. He looks at the scene, the curtain, the girl, the window, the light, the letter, the Cupid presiding silently above it all. And he understands that what he is looking at is not a domestic interior. It is a theater of interiority. Every object in the room has been placed so that it speaks to every other object. The curtain's voyeurism answers the glass's confession. The Cupid's certainty answers the girl's ambiguity. The letter's radiance answers the room's shadow. He picks up his chalk. He begins. Outside, the Cooper on the Oud Delft strikes another stave. The canal light shifts by a fraction of a degree as a cloud moves somewhere above the city. The girl does not move. She holds a letter. She stands in the light that was created to meet her this morning, as if the light itself had been waiting for exactly this face. He begins, as he always begins, with the dark. This is the paradox at the center of his practice, that a painter obsessed with light must first construct its opposite, before the luminous shoulder, before the glowing parchment. There must be the underlayer, the Doodverf, the dead coloring, a term so blunt, so entirely without poetry, that it seems almost deliberately chosen to describe the stage of painting that is furthest from the finished thing. It will spend the next 4 centuries pressed between the ground and the surface, doing its quiet structural work in permanent obscurity. He mixes lead white with raw umber, a touch of black. The resulting gray is the color of a sky that has not yet decided what weather it intends. He loads the brush, thinly, almost transparently, and he begins to map. This is cartography, not painting. He is drawing the territory of shadow and light, recording the basic fact of the scene, before the scene itself can shift or fade, or be lost to the ordinary treachery of changing morning light. Across the room, she's still reading, or she is still holding the letter in the posture of reading, which is not quite the same thing. He cannot see her eyes. He does not need to. What the painting requires of her is not expression, but posture, not feeling, but the physical evidence that feeling has passed through a body and left its residue in the set of the shoulders, the angle of the chin, the particular way the hands hold the paper. He looks at the hands. They are this morning the most important thing in the room. The hands are the part of the body that the will has forgotten to control. The face can be composed. The posture can be arranged. But the hands, when they are holding something that matters, are honest in ways that everything else is not. The knuckles of the right hand are slightly whitened, where the paper's edge presses against the base of the fingers. This is not a grip of anxiety. It is something quieter, more sustained. The whiteness of the knuckle is the physical record of a decision being made at a level below consciousness, the decision to hold on. Beneath the skin, the tendons that run from wrist to fingertip are under a tension that the surface conceals, but does not entirely disguise. Vermeer looks at this depression, this narrow valley of shadow between the tendons, and he understands that this is where the painting will be won or lost. He mixes the shadow color, natural ultramarine, ground from lapis lazuli, the stone that in 1657 costs more by weight than gold. It travels from the mountains of Afghanistan along routes so long and dangerous that it carries in its blue the compressed distance of half a world. The resulting color is not quite blue. It is the color of skin where the light does not reach it, the color of the inner wrist, seen on a winter morning. The letter lies between them, like a third presence. The parchment is not flat. It has acquired a topography. There are ridges where the folds have been, valleys where the paper has relaxed. The light from the window strikes this topography and reports it. Where the parchment rises to meet the light, it glows with a warmth that the shadows make almost incandescent. The whole surface of the letter is a landscape in miniature, and the words written on it exist within that landscape the way villages exist within a countryside, as the reason the landscape matters. The ink is not entirely black, where the quill pressed hard. The mark is dense and dark, a concentrated intention. Where the pressure lightened, the ink is thinner, and at its thinnest edge it bleeds very slightly into the surrounding parchment, a barely perceptible halo of gray. The words breathe. At their edges, they are not fixed. They are the residue of a human act, performed at speed by a hand that was, at the time of writing, feeling something. It was attempting to organize into language. What it was feeling, Vermeer does not know. He suspects it does not matter, or rather, he suspects that what the painting must convey is not the content of the feeling, but the fact of it, the sheer physical fact that there is a feeling in the room, that it is. The window is not simply open. It is open in the particular way that windows in Delft are open, on cool mornings in the middle of the 17th century, with intention, with ceremony almost. The iron latch catches in its keep with a sound so small and so familiar that the person who performed the action has already forgotten doing it. The latch itself is a modest object, wrought iron, dark with the oil of many hands. It is not decorative. It was made by someone who was thinking about function and nothing else. And yet, because this is a Vermeer interior, every object achieves a kind of inadvertent beauty. The latch catches the morning light along one edge and holds it there as a thin, bright line, a highlight so fine it might have been drawn with a single hair. The glass above the open lower casement is closed. It is leaded glass, small panes held in place by a network of lead cames, the whole grid giving the window the appearance of a map, whose territories have been drawn by someone more interested in containment than in geography. The glass itself is not what a later century would recognize as transparent. Molten glass spun into a flat disk, ripples, slight undulations in the surface where the cooling was not perfectly even, bubbles arrested mid-rise, visible as tiny dark circles the moment you hold the pane to the light, a faint greenish cast, giving the whole surface the color of water seen through water. Vermeer stands at a distance from the window and studies what the glass does to the light. He has done this before, but each window is different. The light enters through the glass and it does not arrive in straight lines. It bends. It scatters slightly, broken into a constellation of soft highlights that move across the wall as the sky moves. The result is a light that is, in the truest sense, alive, and it falls on her face. She is standing close enough to the glass that the refracted light from the leaded panes moves across her forehead in a pattern that is almost musical. A series of soft highlights following the rhythms of the rippled glass and the shifting sky above the canal. This is what chiaroscuro actually means when it is practiced by someone who understands what they are doing. Not theatrical contrast, but the slow, continuous, anatomically faithful record of knee light traverses the surface, her profile, in the room's direct light, is composed. Whatever the letter has told her, the profile does not report it. The jaw is set with the mild firmness of someone who has decided that they will not be observed feeling what they feel. The eye is directed at the letter with an attention whose quality cannot be read as either grief or relief or love. But the glass gives her away. The upper casement, angled very slightly inward, has caught her reflection. Or rather, it has caught what the 17th century glass thinks her reflection ought to be, which is something considerably stranger and more candid than a mirror would produce. The ripples that scatter the incoming light also scatter the reflected image. The bubbles that interrupt the passage of the sky also interrupt the passage of her face. What appears in the glass is not a copy of her features, but a version of them, slightly softened, slightly wavered, as if her face has been held under water for a moment and then brought back. And in this distortion, something is revealed. The reflection shows what the profile conceals. The slight blurring of the features removes the social precision that the composed face depends upon. The rippled glass cannot reproduce this precision. It averages. It smooths. And in the smoothing, the underlying emotional weather of the face, the thing that the control is there specifically to conceal, becomes, paradoxically, more visible. What the glass shows is longing, not performed longing, not the decorative melancholy of someone who knows they are being observed. Something older and less curated than that. The longing of a face that has forgotten for a single unguarded moment that there is anyone in the room who might be watching. Vermeer is watching. He does not look away, but he does not look at her directly either. He looks at the canvas, and then at the scene, and then at the canvas again, in the rapid oscillating movement of a painter in the active phase of work, transferring, comparing, adjusting, transferring again. What he is transferring now is not her profile, but her reflection, the ghost in the glass. He is painting the version of her that the imperfect window has chosen to reveal, knowing that the painting will contain both women, the composed one in direct light and the unguarded one in refracted glass, and that the distance between the two is where the painting's entire emotional meaning lives. The receding lines of the window frame move toward her. This is not accidental. In the geometry of the composition, Vermeer has established a perspective that uses the window's own architecture To direct the eye, the lines converge gently at a vanishing point located somewhere behind and above her head. The entire structural logic of the window is a system of arrows, all pointing at her, all insisting, with the quiet authority of geometry, that this is where you should be looking. You are always going to look at her. The painting simply makes it feel inevitable. Before you reach her, you must pass through the table. This is not metaphor. It is compositional fact. The table stands between the viewer and the girl, with the patient authority of something that has always been there and intends to remain. It must be reckoned with. The rug alone demands this. It is not a background element. It is, in its own right, a landscape. The rug is Ushak in origin, woven in the Ottoman territories. Its ground is a deep madder red, a red that does not merely sit on the surface of the wool, but penetrates it. Against this ground, the pattern is worked in golds and creams, and a blue so dark it reads almost as black in the shadows. Geometric forms that at close range dissolve into their component knots, and at distance reassemble into something that resembles order. Vermeer is not working at distance. He is close enough to see what the morning light does to the individual fibers. Where the pile is deepest, the wool catches the light on the very tip of each raised fiber, and holds there a point of luminosity so small it barely constitutes a mark. But multiply this by 10,000 across the entire surface of the rug, and the effect becomes something that no word in 1657 quite covers. The surface of the rug, in morning light, is not a flat field of color. It is a constellation. The pointillé of the rug is not applied. It is structural. It is what happens when light meets a surface that has been built over months of labor from individual acts of knotting. He will paint it by understanding what the eye does when confronted with this kind of complexity. It surrenders to the overall impression. He will drag a brush loaded with gold warm paint across the rug surface, catching slightly on the texture of the canvas beneath. The result will be not the rug, but the feeling of the rug. Light on wool, wealth made tactile. At the table's near edge, the fruit basin has been placed, or has been displaced, which is not quite the same thing. It sits at an angle that is not quite stable, not overturned, not fallen, but tilted on its base in the manner of something that has been set down in haste, within and around it. Peaches, 2 or 3, and an apple. The peaches are the color of the inside of a flame, a gold that deepens at the curve toward something almost red. Vermeer has applied the paint of the peaches thickly. The impasto here is deliberate and confident, building the surface until the painted fruit has a physical curvature that echoes the curvature of the real thing. When the finished painting hangs on a wall, the painted peaches will cast their own micro shadows. They will exist in their own shallow relief, somewhere between the flat world of the canvas and the round world of the room. A peach, in the symbolic vocabulary of this period, is rarely simply a peach. It carries within it an association with the private and the desired, with what is kept from general view, with sweetness that is not offered publicly. whether the letter in the girl's hands is the occasion for the symbolism. Vermeer does not declare. He places the peaches where they are and allows the question to remain open. The basin, the rug, the fruit, all of it sits between the viewer and the girl. You cannot reach her without passing through this landscape of texture and weight. They are the world's gravity, pulling the eye downward and forward before it is allowed to rise toward her. They insist that the space between the viewer and the subject is not empty, that the distance has content, that to look at her is to have already looked at everything that precedes her. She does not turn. The rug holds its 1,000 points of fire. The peaches wait. You have already crossed it. That is the first thing to understand. By the time you are looking at the painting, you have already done the thing the curtain was there to prevent. You have pushed it aside. You are inside the private space. The curtain, hanging now at the left edge of the composition, is not a warning you heeded. It is a warning you ignored. It hangs there still, as the record of a boundary crossed. Yours, not hers. She does not know you are here. This is the condition the curtain establishes, and it is a condition of some moral complexity. You are not an invited guest. There was no invitation. Vermeer performing the particular ethical disappearing act that painters perform. I am not here as a person. I am here as an eye. But you have no such professional cover. You are simply someone who has looked at something private and cannot now unlook. It is silk taffeta. Taffeta has a particular relationship with light that is almost combative. Its surface is woven in a plain weave so tight that individual threads are invisible, a sheen that moves as you move, that changes its quality as the angle of incidence changes. The same fold of fabric that appears deep forest green will shift toward something almost black in its deepest shadow, and toward something almost gold where the light catches the raised edge. The green itself is malachite deep, verdigris, possibly. This green is not soft. It does not recede politely. It occupies the left third of the composition with the physical assertiveness of something that has decided it belongs there. The effect of this massive, dark, saturated block against the bright column of light is one of the most precisely calculated tensions in the entire painting. The curtain does not balance the light. It quarrels with it. Stand very close to the curtain. What you notice first is that it is not entirely in focus. The edges of the fabric are soft, rendered with a deliberate softness that corresponds to a precise optical truth. The curtain is too close. When the eye, or the lens of the camera obscura, is focused on a subject at a certain distance, objects significantly closer do not resolve into sharpness. The soft curtain and the sharp girl, the blurred foreground and the focused subject. This is depth made visible. This is the painting telling you that the curtain and the girl inhabit different layers of space. The curtain's softness is your proximity. The girl's sharpness is her separateness. She is in focus because she's there, in her world. You are by the curtain, close, blurred, and uninvited. A curtain, in the iconographic vocabulary of this period, is is a threshold marker. It designates the difference between what is shown and what is withheld. In church interiors, curtains hang before altarpieces, drawn back to reveal the sacred image. Vermeer's curtain cannot be revoked. You cannot close it. You cannot restore the privacy it was there to protect. The boundary is already behind you, and what you are looking at is a woman who has drawn around herself an interior curtain of her own. She is present in the room and absent from it simultaneously. Her body is here, her attention is entirely elsewhere. Inside the letter, inside whatever world the words on the parchment have opened around her. Two curtains, then, his, made of silk, hanging in paint, hers, made of attention, drawn inward around the letter like a garment pulled close against the cold. Both of them are doing the same work, keeping the most important thing just out of reach. For 250 years, the wall was blank, not empty. Walls are never truly empty. They accumulate the light that falls on them, and the patina of years. But to the eye, the wall behind the girl appeared to offer nothing. A warm umber plane, a background, the kind of wall that exists in paintings to give the eye somewhere to rest. Someone had put it there. The blankness. Not Vermeer. Vermeer painted a wall with something on it, and that something was enormous. But sometime in the decades after his death, another hand applied a layer of paint over the back wall and erased what was there. Decided that a blank wall was preferable to whatever they saw looking back at them. Between 2019 and 2021, during a restoration, the conservators found him again. He is large. This is the first surprise. A substantial canvas occupying a significant portion of the back wall. The figure depicted is Cupid, not the soft cherub of later sentiment, but a more purposeful, more physical figure. A boy god at the threshold of something. Beneath his feet, two masks. He stands on them, with the full weight of the allegorical logic of 1657. The masks are the masks of false love, the faces that desire wears when it is performing rather than feeling. Cupid stands upon these masks. He has conquered them. He occupies the space above them with the calm authority of something that has already won an argument. What this declares is specific and unambiguous. The love contained in the letter is true. This is not a minor claim. In a culture that distinguished carefully between amor veris and its counterfeits, the presence of this particular Cupid is a kind of testimony, a sworn statement offered in paint. Whatever the letter says, the Cupid confirms that its content is not manipulation. The letter speaks truly, and the Cupid, standing on the crushed masks of every lie, is the witness to this truth. The frame of the Cupid painting catches the window light along its upper edge. Dark wood, slightly gilded at the molding. Vermeer understood what it means to put a painting inside a painting. It means that the interior space of the room becomes infinite, a world hung within a world, adding to the room a layer of pictorial depth, the sense that this room is larger on the inside than its walls suggest. And now consider the room. The girl at the window does not know the Cupid is there. She's reading the letter. She's entirely inside whatever world the words have made for her this morning. A world that Vermeer cannot enter, that we cannot enter. But the Cupid can see her. He is the only figure in the room who is positioned to look at her face directly. Vermeer cannot see her expression. We cannot see her expression. Everything in the composition has conspired to withhold her face from us, to make it the painting's great secret. The Cupid sees it. He stands on his masks, in his darkness, at the edge of the light, and he looks at the face we cannot see with the absolute attention of a figure who has been placed there for precisely this purpose, to witness what we are not permitted to witness, to know what we are not permitted to know. Someone covered him over in a later decade. Perhaps they found his gaze uncomfortable. The blue traveled further than she did. This is worth holding for a moment before anything else, before the technique, before the symbolism. The blue in her sleeves began its existence in the mountains of what is now northeastern Afghanistan, where lapis lazuli has been extracted from the earth for more than 6,000 years. To reach Delft from Badakhshan in 1657 requires passing through half the world. The stone travels by donkey, by river, by ship, across Persia, through the Mediterranean, to the Netherlands. It arrives in the studios of painters who have been waiting for it, with the particular patience of people who understand that the most important materials are always the ones that have traveled the greatest distance to reach you. The grinding comes next. What Vermeer receives, what he pays for by weight, at a price that places it alongside gold, is the finest grade, ultramarinum, the blue from beyond the sea. He uses it for her sleeves. The blue is not simply blue. The pigment particles retain a crystalline structure that interacts with light in a way that synthetic blues do not. They do not merely reflect blue wavelengths, they hold light within themselves, briefly, and release it with a quality that sits somewhere between reflection and luminescence. In shadow, most blues die. They gray out. They become the color of absence. Natural ultramarine in shadow does something different. It remains. The folds of her sleeves, where the light from the window no longer reaches, are not dark blue. They are blue in the dark, which is an entirely different condition. Vermeer builds this depth through glazing. Thin, translucent films, each one allowed to dry before the next is applied. The result is a color that has genuine optical depth. You look into it, fractionally, before you look at it. The sleeves are not a surface painted blue. They are a depth that is blue all the way down. Against this, the yellow, lead tin yellow, a pigment produced by heating lead and tin oxides together. It has been applied to the bodice of her jacket with a freedom that the ultramarine glazing does not permit. This is impasto work, and impasto has its own logic, its own physical pleasure. He loads the brush heavily. The paint is thick, thicker than cream. Where the light from the window strikes the shoulder, the paint is at its thickest, built up in a ridge that stands perceptibly proud of the surrounding surface, a topography of light, a landscape of intention built in pigment and linseed oil. This ridge, this physical elevation of paint, is not merely description, it is participation. The painted shoulder does not represent a surface catching light. It is a surface that catches light. The impasto is the painting's claim on the present tense of every moment in which it is seen. Now stand back and consider them together. The yellow and the blue, the thick, light-catching yellow, and the deep, light-holding blue. Yellow pushes forward. Blue recedes. The girl's presence in the room is therefore not uniform. She is simultaneously advancing and retreating, her lit shoulder pressing toward the viewer, her shadowed sleeves withdrawing into the blue depth of themselves. She is, in the color logic of the painting, always arriving and always departing, always in the act of being here and already somewhere else. The letter explains why. The colors enact it. We've been circling her for 8 movements now. The room, the curtain, the window, the rug, the letter, the hands. All of it has been a form of approach, a careful narrowing of distance. We are there now. There is nothing left between us and her face. And her face is turned away. This is the decision that contains the entire painting. The decision to show us a woman reading a letter by turning her face away from us at precisely the angle that makes her expression permanently, completely, mercifully unreadable. Vermeer understood something about the human face, that a face turned away makes no offer. It is not performing. It is not aware of you. It is entirely engaged with something else. And because it offers nothing, you bring everything, whatever you're carrying, whatever private weather you arrived with, whatever longing or grief. She receives it, not actively, but because the empty space of her withheld face is exactly the shape of what you need to place there. She becomes, in her refusal to show you anything, the most intimate figure in the history of painting. She is, specifically, no one. This is the gift of the turned face. Look at what remains. The jaw, the cheekbone, the slight forward inclination of the chin, the hair with a loose strand at the temple that has been allowed to remain because he paints what he sees, because the painting's fidelity to the ordinary imperfection of an actual person is part of what makes it feel like something that happened yesterday. And then, if you stand close enough, the corner of the mouth, there is a point of light there, barely a point, a touch of lead white, placed at the exact junction of the lips, where the moisture of the mouth catches light. It is not a smile. It is not grief. It is the optical fact of a living mouth, the evidence that the person Vermeer was looking at was breathing, was warm. It is the painting's pulse. The edges of her face do not end. The boundary between her skin and the surrounding light has been dissolved. The sfumato of the face is not a smoky recession. It is something more local, more intimate. The edges of her face breathe outward into the room. The room breathes inward around her. She is not a hard object in a soft space. She is a varlock that the light has partially claimed. Where the light from the window falls on the forehead, the skin is warm. Where it falls away, the face softens into the room's umber depth, as gradually as a voice softens into silence. At the end of a sentence that has said everything it intended to say. She does not disappear. She becomes continuous with the light. The eyes are not visible. And this final, most complete withholding is where the painting's secret lies. We have her hands, and they told us something. We have her reflection in the glass, and it told us something we were not entirely sure we were entitled to know. But the eyes, the place where human beings have always looked first for the truth, the eyes are turned away, directed at the letter, engaged in a relation of absolute privacy that the painting respects completely and permanently. Nay, she is feeling, reading those words on that morning, is hers. It was hers in 1657, when the Cupid watched from the back wall and the curtain hung at the edge of the space. It is hers now. The secret is intact. That is the final, extraordinary achievement of this painting, that it can be looked at by everyone and give away nothing, that it can remain at its core, completely, inviolably private. She read the letter. She did not share it. The painting is the room in which she keeps it. The light is changing. It has been changing since the moment it arrived, but until now the changes have been small enough to manage. Now the change is larger. The column of light that has stood all morning at the window has begun its slow withdrawal, not dramatically, simply by becoming something slightly different from what it was. The shadows that were cool are warming at their edges. The morning is ending the way mornings end when you have been paying close attention to them, not all at once, but in a continuous series of small losses. Vermeer puts down his brush. He does not do it with ceremony. He sets the brush on the edge of the palette with the quiet pragmatism of someone who's been working for several hours. He wipes his fingers. He looks at the canvas. What he sees there is not finished. It will require more sessions, more mornings. The dead coloring is complete. The hands are done. The tension that will not relax for as long as paint remains on canvas. What remains is the refinement, the final passages of light, the last conversations between the cool shadows and the warm highlights. He will return tomorrow, if the light is right. He turns from the canvas. The girl is still at the window. For a moment, he sees her as both things simultaneously. The figure he has spent the morning translating into paint, and the woman who has spent the morning somewhere inside the letter. She is not moved, not substantially, but she has been moving in the way that people move when they are standing still. He says something. We do not know what. She sets down the letter. She moves toward the door. We do not see her leave. She simply is no longer there. The window still holds its light. The rug still glows with its 1,000 small fires. The letter lies on the table, folded now, its cream parchment closed around its words. Only the painting knows she was here. The green curtain falls, not literally, but something closes in the logic of the space. The threshold that the curtain marks reasserts itself. The girl and her letter return to the privacy they were always entitled to. The morning folds itself closed around them. What remains on the easel is the record. The painting will survive things that would seem to guarantee its destruction. It will survive the slow dissolution of Vermeer's reputation. It will survive the auction houses and the passage through hands that did not entirely knew they were holding. It will survive the someone who looked at the back wall and decided it would be simpler without the Cupid, and covered 200 years of witness under a layer of plain paint. It will travel to Dresden. It will survive the Second World War by being moved to a salt mine in 1942 by curators who understood that paintings can be killed by the same things that kill people. It will be found by trophy brigades in 1945 and taken to Moscow, before being returned to Dresden in 1955. The painting came home. It will hang in Dresden still. It will be looked at every day, and all of them will feel in the presence of that cool northern light something that they may not have words for, a quality of stillness, a sense of having almost understood something that has just moved slightly out of reach. This is the painting working. This is what it was made to do. Consider what Vermeer did on that morning in 1657, in a room that smelled of linseed oil and canal air. He took an hour, a single, ordinary hour, and he refused to let it end. He could not stop the light from changing. He could not stop the girl from eventually setting down the letter and moving toward the door. He could not stop the morning from becoming afternoon, but he could paint it. He could take the light as it was falling, on the rug, on the hands, on the shoulder, on the letter, on the face that would not turn, and he could translate it into a language that does not age. A secret, once painted, is protected by the light forever. The light does not move. She is still there. Vermeer's studio may be empty now, but this silence is never truly silent. Today, another stands before that famous canvas in the Dresden Museum. She did not inherit just her mother's eyes. She inherited her mother's unfinished brushstrokes. This story does not end here, for this legend is the deepest sliver of the Silver Sliver Stories universe. This is a bridge between a cold night at a lighthouse and a girl who carries a brush she has yet to use.